Hey, guess what? This is my lazy vlog. Now, I've said before that Thor Ragnarok was my new favorite MCU movie and that it dethroned Iron Man 1. And then I rewatched the MCU movies to prepare for Thanos coming, and I started from Iron Man 1, and then I rewatched Iron Man 1, and you know what? No. Iron Man 1 took its throne back. It's a really good movie, and for many reasons. But Thor Ragnarok takes a very, very close second. And it's such a fun movie, right? We can all agree it was such a fun movie. But there was one person who needs some credit for why RagnaROCKs. So here's the backstory. Jack Black is the man I'm talking about. Jack Black needs a little bit of credit here. Love him or hate him. You know, you might hate his movies. You might love his movies. Tenacious D was a big thing. I'm a huge Tenacious D fan. I got all 3 of the albums, 4 of the albums, technically, if you count Jazz. But people don't realize that RagnaROCKs because of Jack Black. Here's the story. So, I'm a huge Led Zeppelin fan. And I feel like the use of the Immigrant Song in Ragnarok was by far the most appropriate use of that song. Obviously, because the song is about the Norse gods, and that's what Thor is. So, and then when Thor comes out with the lightning at the end in the fight scene, and that song starts playing, and people are just kicking butt all over the place, like that was epic. Perfect fight song. It's so cool. And there's a reason it was that way. So, for the longest time, Led Zeppelin, the surviving members of Led Zeppelin, who own the rights to the music, Robert Plant, the singer, Jimmy Page, the guitar player, and John Paul Jones, the bass player / keyboard player, they've been very stingy. Not stingy, but I don't want to use that word, but they haven't let people use their music. They've been very not letting people use the music of Led Zeppelin in things. That's why for a long time, you never heard a Led Zeppelin song in other things. You hear Queen all over the place. You hear, Chili Peppers, Van Halen. You hear all those bands all over the place, but you never really heard Led Zeppelin for the longest time. Led Zeppelin ended their career in 1980, 4 years before I was born, because the death of John Bonham. But all throughout that time, up until about the late 90s, early 2000s, you barely ever heard any Zeppelin tunes anywhere. And that's just because Robert Plant and Jimmy Page didn't really let anybody use it. Because the way it works is like if you're going to use a song, you have to get their permission. The owner of the music, you have to get their permission, and then you got to pay them, and you got to pay royalties, and the whole bit. But they always said no to people, right? Until early 2000s, I forget exactly the year, but early 2000-ish, enter Jack Black. And he's making a little film called The School of Rock. Now, The School of Rock is, for better or worse, it's a passable film. It's a fun little movie. It was written specifically for Jack Black. And, it's got a rock and it's got school, and so it's the School of Rock and all that. It doesn't really hold up, I don't think. Now you go back and rewatch it, you're like, wow, this is just silly. But it was cool at the time, right? And I liked it at the time. But anyways, so there's a lot of really epic rock songs in that movie. And there's the Immigrant Song in that movie. So what happened is Jack Black or the producers of the film and everybody, like they went after Robert Plant and asked him for permission to use the Immigrant Song, and he said no, like he always does. But they're filming the concert scene at the end, where there's 1,000 extras in the audience watching them play the concert scene, right? And Jack Black, knowing that Robert Plant has a reputation of saying, no, you can't use my music, what he did, and I know this because I watched the extras, because when the movie came out, I really liked it, and I got the DVD, or I rented the DVD, because I don't actually own it. I don't think I own it. Do I own it? You know what? I do own it. I do own it. Looking at my, I do own it. It's down there. Anyway, so I do own it. So I got the DVD and I watched it, and on the extras, it tells the story, and you can see what happened here. So he's filming the concert scene at the end, and he gets a camera out and puts the camera very much like what I'm doing here, talking to it, and with 1,000 extras behind him, they beg Robert Plant for permission to use the Immigrant Song, with 1,000 people begging Robert Plant for permission to use the Immigrant Song in their movie, because he knew that using the Immigrant Song would just make it that much better. So when Robert Plant saw the video of Jack Black supported by 1,000 people begging for permission, he caved, and he said, yeah, okay, you can use the Immigrant Song in your movie. What that did, though, is start a precedent. From then on, the Immigrant Song became achievable. It made it so that people can use the Immigrant Song, which is why since then you've heard the Immigrant Song in a number of things. It was in Shrek. It was in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. It's been all over the place since then, because Jack Black opened the door with 1,000 people behind him, so that the Immigrant Song is now achievable. Now, granted, everyone who uses it has to be able to, they still have to ask, and they still, they have to pay, and it's going to be expensive, I'm sure, but that initial contact with Jack Black and 1,000 extras is what opened the door to Robert Plant saying yes, and it's what legally opened the door to that song being usable. Fast forward till now, and because that song is usable, we have an epic fight scene at the end of Thor Ragnarok featuring, and I'm sure Marvel could easily afford the price tag of that song, because their pockets are probably deeper than the TARDIS. They're bigger on the inside. Anyways, so it connects. The Immigrant Song is in Thor because Jack Black opened the door, 20 years ago? 15 years ago? I don't know. How long ago was that movie made? I don't remember. It's been a long time, I'm sure. But now you know why Jack Black is responsible for making Thor Ragnarok. So on that note now, I'm going to ask you to go and visit my Indiegogo campaign, because if you didn't know, I'm making a Star Wars fan film. It's called The Saber. You can even read the first 2 pages of the script on my website at easilyamusedgroup.com. And there's a link in the place where links generally are. And, dude, go check out the fundraiser and consider donating to, to support the fundraiser. And there's some really cool incentives and stuff. Help me make the best Star Wars fan film that I can possibly make. So go find out more about it at the link in the place where links generally are. The Saber, a Star Wars fan film. If you're a Star Wars fan, then you want to see my film. That's why they call it a fan film. That's not why they call it a fan film. But hey, guess what? This was my lazy vlog.